Welcome back. Only a handful of musicians get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. Now a Siouxland native is among that select few. The late Keith Knutson, who was born in Le Mars and spent part of his youth in northwest Iowa. He's been inducted into the Hall of Fame as a member of the Doobie Brothers. He was a drummer and his harmonies may have been almost as important for the world-famous Doobie Brothers. And
well, he was funny, great sense of humor. He just had such a good heart.
Just a goofball, kind of like his father.
Keith Knutson was born in Le Mars in 1948, and the little guy on the left with his older cousin George Taylor was rarely seen without a six-shooter and cowboy hat.
He would come out and we'd go out in the pasture and walk barefoot through the fresh cow pies.
But the scourge of the early 1950s, polio, caught up with the 5-year-old Keith as it did with many other children.
And my uncle and his dad brought him to Sioux City, and they thought they had lost him a couple times.
Keith spent months in an iron lung like these, as polio ravaged the Sioux City area more than anywhere else in America. But he survived. As part of his rehabilitation, a neighbor who taught music showed him how to play drums. And as a 14-year-old now in Hawarden, he'd get his first drum kit.
The garage had like a second story, and that's where his drums were. You know, Mom said, "You're not having them in the house. Go out and beat on your drums out in the garage." So
the Knutsons eventually moved to Princeton, Illinois, where Keith had his first gigs.
And if they played in a bar, his dad would have to go with him because he was only 14.
After high school, Knutson played with a number of groups until his big break in 1974. Being asked to join the Doobie Brothers was just a week of practice before hitting the road. Through the years of touring, the band has made numerous stops in Sioux City, including during Rivercade.
We took my grandmother, filled her ears with cotton, and I think she enjoyed it.
And it was always a good time for a family reunion. It was a post-concert party in 1980 at Jackson, Mississippi that led Keith to find love at first sight.
One of the DJs came up to me at the party and went, "Keith Knutson's been asking who you are." And I was like, "Who's Keith Knutson?"
After an early morning breakfast together and 2 weeks of phone calls from the road, Keith and Kate would eventually head towards marriage and adding daughter Dana to the family.
And, I never thought of my dad as a rock star. Like I said, we were home. It was about his horses and me and my mom and his motorcycles, like very normal.
Illness kept Keith from attending his 2003 induction into the Iowa Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. His father, Charles, accepted the award for him. Unfortunately, some remnants of Keith's childhood polio remained later in life.
When the concert was over, he'd have to go back to the hotel and sit in the hot tub because his arms just ached.
After years together, the Doobie Brothers disbanded in 1982. But in '87, Keith organized a one-time fundraiser for the National Veterans Foundation.
Keith really did called everybody and put the whole band back together. And I mean the whole band. They had so much fun at this concert. Part of the band reunited.
Knutson rejoined the Doobies in 1993. But the impact of polio led to him suffering from pneumonia a number of times because of his weakened lungs. And at the age of 56, it claimed his life in February of 2005.
We talked to his childhood doctor after he passed away. I think out of that doctor's 6 or 7 patients, 5 of them had died in their 50s.
He wasn't really an award seeker, and neither is the rest of the band. As far as human beings go, the Doobie Brothers are the most humble, grateful, family-oriented, loving people I've ever known in my life.
Kate says Keith loved his family, his bandmates, and he managed to recreate on California soil the Iowa farm he loved so much as a child.
We lived on a ranch. He had his horses right there. He was off the road. He had a bandana around his neck and a cowboy hat on and was riding his horses.
Believe it or not, Keith Knutson couldn't read music, but that certainly didn't stop him from having an incredibly successful career that's now been recognized by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.